Welcome to The Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. Each week we investigate themes of leadership, entrepreneurship, and mindset with some of the greatest minds in real estate. And now, the data scientist of real estate, George Roberts.
Welcome back, entrepreneurs. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing jon.ostenson. Jon is the CEO of FranBridge Consulting, a top 1% franchise consultant, and the best-selling author of Non-Food Franchising. Jon draws on his experience as a former Inc. 500 franchise president and multi-brand franchisee in serving his clients. Jon is a frequent contributor on franchising for publications such as Forbes, Inc., and Bloomberg. Welcome to the show, Jon.
George, thanks for having me. Love the show and excited to be here.
All right, awesome. Well, hey, I love your book, by the way, and I'm very happy to have you here because I think that your book fills a very important need. I think there are a lot of people out there who are interested in what it's like to run their own business, wonder what it'd be like to maybe get the inside track on that by working with franchise. And your book really gets to the heart of the matter very quickly. There's a lot to franchising. I think a lot of people think of fast food when they think of franchising, but it's so much more than that. So with that, I would like to just start by asking you, say when you're at a cocktail party, what do you tell people, when they ask, what do you do for a living?
Yeah, it depends on who's asking, but in most crowds, I get associated with the F word, franchising. So, oftentimes I'm explaining the various types of industries and how you can plug in, and how I've personally plugged in a lot of our friends and relatives, and then we're able to help those across the U.S. match up with the right opportunity, because it can be a challenge out there, George. There are about 4,000 franchise brands, and probably a little more than half of those are in the food space or in the hotel space, which are just different animals. And so we focus on all these other industries that we'll dive into today. And so oftentimes I find myself educating and answering a number of questions that come from that. But ultimately, I play matchmaker between a lot of great franchise companies and great entrepreneurs and investors.
Okay, so there are over 4,000 franchise options available in the U.S. alone. So can you give us a rundown of some of the more common choices and how they fall on the passivity scale? Of course, a lot of our people here are passive investors. We have a lot of real estate investors. And, what does it really take to run one of these franchises?
Yeah, so hitting the first question first, the industries, we see a lot of people resonating, especially those with a real estate background, which I'd say is probably 75% of our clients. They either invest in real estate themselves actively or passively. But things like home and property services are very scalable, understandable, needed business models in the market. Things like health and wellness, automotive, we're still doing some fitness, not as much as we used to, but I'd say it's things that are somewhat recession resilient. So, what will people always spend on regardless of the economy? They'll spend on things they care about: their kids, their pets, their aging parents, to some degree, their homes, their health. And so categories like that I'd say stand up no matter what economic cycle we're in, are attracting a lot of candidates. And of course, those are broad umbrellas, but those are some categories that we see a lot of activity in. As far as the role that the owner plays, about 1/3 of our clients will step into an owner-operator role, where maybe they're jumping from the corporate world and stepping into business ownership, and they like the fact that franchising has done a lot of the heavy lifting for them, and you've got some training wheels. So at least they'll be an owner-operator for a while. They may then replace themselves with a manager. But then about 2/3 of our clients get into what we call semi-passive or semi-absentee arrangements, where, and not every franchise system allows for this, but I'd say the majority do, most of the ones that we work with. And that's where they're putting a manager in place day one to run the day-to-day operation. So it allows them to spend more of their time, whatever time they are putting into the business, on more high payoff activities, developing referral partnerships, coaching their key employees, that sort of thing. Now, I never want to sugarcoat it. Standing up a business is a challenge. There's going to be issues you deal with. Nothing's a cakewalk. However, franchising does, really ease that transition a lot more than just a traditional startup. So, and then finally, the third model, it's very rare in franchising, but there are 4 or 5 companies out there today that are offering a truly passive investor model, where the franchisor will run the business for you. I actually my most recent franchise investment, I did it down in South Florida recently, and I live in Atlanta, but the franchisor is running the business for me. And it's a business that does custom orthotics and insoles and footwear, catering to the older demographic, which, Del Rey down there is going to be a great market for us. And so there is that passive model out there. It's just very rare. And we've had clients bind, I think, each of those opportunities across the country. It's just pretty popular.
Yeah, I love it. All those diverse opportunities, very, very exciting. And, as you mentioned in your book, Non-Food Franchising, that one of the advantages of becoming a franchisee is that you're going in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And I think as a very important second question, if I want to know how much time I'm going to have to put in, well, then exactly what sort of support might I expect? Obviously, that varies by industry. Maybe you can break it down.
Yeah, and just like any industry, you're going to have good players and bad players on the franchisor front. And that's where we come in to really help our clients, because, you have to get past the fancy marketing messages out there online and really understand the team behind it. Who is this you're partnered up with? Almost like a business partner. And so, certainly there are different levels of support, but the nice thing is, if you are putting a manager in place day one, I mean, the onus is still on you as the owner. However, that franchisor can be their go-to for questions and technical support, on a day-to-day basis. So it does take some of that burden off of you. So when I think about franchising, the support coming from that franchisor, what I'm looking for, it's much more than the brand. In food, brand is everything. But say we're to mention insulation. That's a $52 billion a year industry. Very few people can name multiple companies in insulation. So it's everything else that goes into that support behind it. It's, the fact that you have a playbook day one. This business has been proven out to be profitable in other markets, and now it's just about executing, that road to profitability here. It's about having a franchisor on the sideline that can act as a coach. The better you do, the better they do. You've got other franchisees in the system. So you have people that are running the same day-to-day operations across the country, and you can learn from each other. I think that's oftentimes overlooked. You've got bulk buying power, whether it be for products or maybe for services on the back end. So there's just a lot of, benefits along the way, but then I'd say over time, also from an exit standpoint, one day you're building a business, you're going to want to sell that business. And there have been multiple studies done that showed that franchising oftentimes trades at a multiple that's higher than non-franchised and like-kind industries. I won't go into all the details of the studies, but in a nutshell, they found typically that's about a 1.5 multiple of non-franchised and like-kind industries. So, you start checking these boxes, and, I'd say franchising is not right for everyone. Some people are too entrepreneurial and want to put their thumbprints all over it. But for a lot of people and a lot of existing business owners that want to expand into other categories, franchising makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting aspect, the fact that these businesses do trade at a higher multiple. That indicates that people are seeing some quality, some value in the franchising model. Obviously, some benefit for those who are interested in coming in, buying the franchise and expanding it. Definitely an opportunity to benefit from that expanded multiple. But one of the things I want to mention, look, we talked about the book a couple of times. I think it's a great book, by the way.
Thank
It
you.
was $4.86 when I got it on Audible. So I would just deliver a quick endorsement to the audience. Definitely don't overthink it. Just go out and buy it. I think it's definitely something very valuable if you are in alternative assets, as I am, and I'm sure you are as well. Now, you mentioned also that 3/4 or something along those lines of your clients, they do invest in real estate. So what is so compelling to the real estate investor in the franchise model?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, and I personally invest in real estate, whether it be multifamily or mobile homes or self-storage, through syndications primarily. But that's one of my asset classes within my portfolio. And what I found is a lot of our clients will do syndications or single-family homes or multifamily. And I think there's a lot of translatable benefits to franchising. And I oftentimes talk about franchising as an asset class in itself. But I think that semi-passive involvement would be there. Alternatives to the stock market. I'd say we've definitely seen a pickup in real estate investor interest. Part of that is, there are businesses like some of those property services I mentioned where they're saying, hey, we're already using these services. Why don't we bring those in-house, and then we can provide them to others as well, whether it be there's a great property management franchise, for instance, that a real estate broker client of ours just recently bought into. Yeah, but then there's also ways to, I have some commercial investors that say, hey, we've got access to different retail properties, or we know how to find the best retail properties, if it's a retail customer facing business, and so they want to use that background, in the franchise realm. So those are a couple of quick thoughts, but as far as the phenomenon today, I'd say, hey, people are nervous about the stock market. Interest rates are high. There are only so many good real estate deals to be had these days. And so I think a lot of people are looking for yield and other options. And so they're poking their head up and saying, what else is out there? And we're seeing record levels of cash on the sidelines still. So some of our clients will use cash. Some will use cash plus an SBA loan. That's very common. And then some will use an old retirement plan and roll that over through what's called the ROBS program. So kind of hit on a few different things there.
So I'd like to know, what sort of business owner is the best fit for a franchise model or to become a franchisee, and then what you're doing on the consultant end to make sure that you're matching the right type of owner to the right type of business.
Yeah, as far as the owner goes, I think someone that doesn't come in and pretend to be the smartest guy in the room. I think, when I was a franchisor at Shelf Genie franchise, and we had franchisees all across North America, and I got to see who were our top performers, middle of the pack and lower pack. I'd say our best performers were those that followed the system. And that sounds so cliche, but that's why you get involved in a franchise. So I'd say willingness to follow a system and execute. You've got to be someone that people like to be around, whether that be employees. You can attract and retain good employees. You can, work well with your vendors, work well with the franchisors. So I'd say those basic people skills. I mean, those are really the key pieces. It's just, we see such a wide variety of backgrounds that can fit that mold. And so, I mean, we do placements with Wall Street attorneys, a whole lot of doctors and medical professionals out there, a lot of former corporate executives, and a lot of existing business owners. I gave a talk down in Miami a couple of weeks ago at an investor conference, and these were all business owners in the crowd. And I told them, some of you are too entrepreneurial. This isn't the right fit for you. But for many of you, you appreciate the fact that you've been there and done that. The hard work that goes in. And if you can come in and start on third base instead of first base, have a lot of things already in place, that's an attractive proposition. So it really is across the board. I think it's more of a mindset than it is a background.
So I know that you've seen a major increase in interest in franchise opportunities over the last few years, maybe since the pandemic. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I'd say a little closer into the pandemic, I think a lot of people were questioning the path they're on and spent some time soul searching. So we definitely saw a pickup there. And we were doing a lot before the pandemic, and we continue to do a lot in 2020. People working from home saying, I really don't want to go back in the office. What are business options I can do from home? It was pretty common. What are businesses that aren't going to be disrupted by pandemics or recessions or Amazon? Things like non-sexy, boring businesses, whether it be water mitigation or mold remediation, or I mentioned insulation, or in some states, maybe oil changes. We're not doing many in California these days, but senior care, pets, what are those things people will always spend on? And so, that's kind of how I think about it. So it's, people that are questioning the path they're on, but then also those that are just looking for alternative investments beyond what's currently in their portfolio today. And once they start realizing that business ownership offers several different avenues, you've got, cash flow, you've got the exit, but then, especially if they've never been a business owner, now you can write off a lot of expenses that you couldn't otherwise. I mean, here's a little tax hack. And I pay my kids. Well, my kids are fairly young, but I find enough things for them to do in the business to justify it. Well, now they've got money that they can put into a Roth IRA because they have earned income. And so there's just, I get the tax deduction. So, I think when people realize some of those benefits, and, some of those exist in real estate, but here you've got more of an active, you can offset active income, not just passive income.
This would be a great time, I think, to personalize it. So you mentioned that you are not only a franchise consultant, CEO of FranBridge Consulting, but you are also in the position of the franchisee. So tell us about your personal experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had some partnerships that have been great, some that haven't been great. I do some investing on my own, some with others. But I love the support of the franchisor, and I'll kind of hit on that in a minute. So I'm invested, I mentioned just opening up a foot solutions down in South Florida, custom orthotics. That's my most recent one. Before that, it was, and I still have all these others. It was up in Minneapolis, and this is one where I'm a little more passive. I've got another guy running the business, but this is concrete paving and line striping, like for parking lots. And so it's a B2B, in some cases, a recurring revenue type model, non-sexy, which is what people like. I joke that non-sexy is the new sexy.
Sure. Well, I think Warren Buffett would definitely agree.
Absolutely.
Those are his businesses, right? Bread and butter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then I'm invested in a driveway company franchise here in Atlanta. I've got a pool cleaning franchise I've got a small stake in. I'm invested on the franchisor level with a business called Art of Drawers that we're really excited about. Great leadership team behind it. I won't go into all the detail, but it's essentially custom pull-out shelving for kitchens and pantries. So most of my experience has been on the property services side for me personally. However, I've had so many client placements over the last couple of years. I've been able to see how they do in different industries, and the things we look for when we're making that match. And, I work with over 600 franchise companies. Any given moment, there's probably 50 or 60 that I feel are the best of the best. And, the things I'm looking for, it's the financial model's got to check the boxes. The competitive advantages within their industry have to be there. I'm looking at what are current owners saying about their experience. We get that feedback. And then probably most importantly, I'm looking at that leadership team of the franchisor. I want to see robust experience, both from a franchising standpoint, as well as from an industry standpoint. Again, that's going to be your business partner. So, there's a science and there's an art to all of this, but it's kind of that blend of everything, plus the client situation, plus what's going on in their local market and what's available, because things do move fast. And that comes together, and we typically provide our clients with an assortment of 10 or 12 opportunities in their market that, if we're in your shoes, here's what we want to be looking at, and here's why.
Right. I love your example of the orthotics company, because obviously you are somebody who's highly entrepreneurial, chief of your own company, somebody who wants to take charge and take charge of the vision, but there are still opportunities for people like you. For example, that opportunity which you mentioned was a bit more passive. So really cool to know that even if you are that sort of person, you can still find great franchise opportunities.
That's right. That's right. Few and far between on that truly passive model, but we even have a lot that are semi-passive where, again, with the right franchisor, you can really pull back. I mean, I've got clients that own as many as 6 franchises, 30 different territories, and they've created a little organization, and they had to do some work up front, but now they're in a place where they're not involved in the day-to-day. And so everyone's situation is different, is what I've realized. But, if you're the kind of person that can trust, a good general manager that you put in place, and you've got a good franchisor in your back pocket, it's very doable to keep your day job or keep your focus on your existing company, and get this going on the side.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I like about your business model and having you on the show is that I know you get a lot of the same sorts of questions that we get in syndication. So I'll start with probably what I think is the most common one is, can I invest using my self-directed IRAs?
You can. Yes, you can. And there's also the way using a Rob's program where you roll over your 401k or IRA, you set up a C Corp. And there are a few stipulations you have to do to avoid the taxes, but it's all above board. I'm just saying it did not have the tax penalties. And we work with different funding partners to help with all that. So short answer is yes.
Okay, good. And so at this point, I think a lot of people might be quite interested and maybe even ready to dip their toe in the water. So can you tell us, how do you get paid? How do you avoid conflicts of interest?
Absolutely. So to use the real estate analogy, I'm essentially a buyer's agent. And so, I kind of work both sides in that, I represent all these different franchise companies, and I've got relationships with them, and I know who the good ones are and who the ones are that, maybe I wouldn't put as high on the list. But end of the day, the person that I call my client is the one that I'm taking through the process. Now, ultimately, I get paid by the franchisor. When a placement happens, I get paid a referral fee. My clients never pay me a nickel. If they were to go directly to a franchise system or go through us, they're going to pay the same franchise fee. So it's a nice, clean model from that standpoint. And really where I get my validation is when clients come back and buy additional locations, when they come back and buy additional brands, when they refer their brother-in-law, who usually that's a good thing. That's where I get my validation. So get paid by the franchisor, not the franchisee, but I think we're able to sit on their side of the table in the same way a buyer's agent does.
Yeah, great. I love the real estate analogy. And so suppose I decide all this is great and I'm ready to apply for a franchise, and I get presented with the financial disclosure document from the corporation. So how do I prepare myself for what I'm going to see?
Yeah, and that's something I coach my clients through. The FDD, every franchise system has them. They're regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. It's a big, intimidating document. It'll read very one-sided, but when you understand kind of the why behind the provisions, and there's the
Right.
what, but then there's the why. And once you understand that, a lot of it's in there to protect you from other franchisees that could go off the rails and damage the brand and the reputation. The franchisor needs to have certain rights to be able to step in. End of the day, the franchisor wants to keep you happy. I mean, when I was a franchisor, if I ticked off one or two franchisees, they would then talk to all their peer group, and all of a sudden I would have a whole lot of headaches on my hands. So my goal is to keep the children playing happy. And I think when you understand the spirit behind the FDD, and of course, we always recommend having an attorney review that, but that is part of the game. But I think a lot of it's there for your own protection.
All right, cool. Yeah. And I know in your book you go through in detail all of the, I want to say there are at least, gosh, what is it, 19 items there. But I think if you've seen, if you've been investing in syndications, then obviously these documents are not going to be, I don't think, any worse than what you're used to seeing. Now, for those of our audience that might say, well, okay, this sounds like fun, but look, I'm a do-it-yourselfer, hey, why do I want a franchise versus just starting my own small business?
Yeah, I think there's some industries where you can see the value that the franchise provides more than others. But as you go through the process, you want to be asking that franchisor, what am I getting for that royalty stream that I'm paying back to you?
Yeah.
What kind of support, what kind of marketing? Part of the marketing, it's not just that they're creating collateral and placing ads for you, but they also have large data sets that they're able to glean from other markets, so you can have more optimized marketing out of the gate, not waste as much money. So you really want to understand, is there bulk buying power in play? What value am I getting for what I'm giving back to the franchisor? And so a very fair question. We coach our clients around asking that question, because there are some cases where you might say, hey, I can go out there and get a truck and start a business myself. I don't need the franchise. But I'd say in a lot of cases, people value the fact that, again, starting on third base, a lot of things have been figured out, and some are more compelling than others as far as that value they offer.
Yeah, that's great. And there are many things, right? Like obviously the road tested business plan, ability to buy in bulk, and you just have to weigh that against what you are able to do on your own. And then, of course, I think a lot of our listeners, obviously, these are highly talented people. However, at the same time, they're very busy. So it's a great way, of course, to sort of stay in your lane. You can continue doing what you do well, while at the same time dipping your toe in the water of doing perhaps something different.
Exactly. And some of our clients, are existing business owners, and they'll launch franchises as part of their portfolio. My thesis is, let's say you have 4 different companies and one of them's a franchise, I think that franchise, assuming it's a good franchise system, is going to raise the tide of all the boats of the other 3 businesses, because there's going to be things that you learn through the process of going through it. There are best practices that maybe you hadn't thought of with your other businesses. And so, again, there's some synergy there. But I'd say probably 2/3 of our clients, are not existing business owners, probably a third are. So again, it's a pretty wide mix.
Yeah. Okay, so let's continue the timeline a little bit. Say that now you've decided, okay, I actually dipped my toe in the water, operating my franchise. Now I have to start thinking about exit. So what sort of things can a franchise owner do to maximize that exit?
Yeah, number one, and this would go for any business, it's not too dissimilar to just normal business. I mean, you want to have your books in order, make it pretty clear, make it a valuable proposition to someone in the market. But the nice thing when you go to exit, you do have a few options, kind of the low-hanging fruit. Then you go to the open market. Number one, I would talk to adjacent franchisees around you. It's very, very common for franchisees to acquire each other to kind of expand their footprint and to allow for you to have an exit. I mean, with our driveway company, we expanded by acquiring 2 other franchisees after we launched ours. So very common. Next, I would go to the franchisor and say, hey, who has shown interest in this area for the brand in the past that I could potentially tap into from a natural lead list standpoint? So that's kind of your low hanging fruit. Next step would be going out there to the open market and listing it. And you could use a broker if you want to, or try or hand edit and getting it on different websites. And again, it's just like any business. What's the narrative behind it? Why are you selling the business? What's that growth trajectory look like? Is it a reasonable ask that you're asking for it? From there, I'd say it's pretty par for the course. And technically, the franchisor has to approve that buyer, but most franchisors, unless you're selling it to a true knucklehead, I mean, they're going to approve that person.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Jon. This has been really exciting. But before we let you go, I'd love to invite you into our rapid fire round, the 7. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So if you could be known for just one thing, what would that be?
Yeah, a man that cared about the things that are worth caring about: faith, family, relationships, the things that last.
What is the greatest lesson in leadership you've learned as an entrepreneur?
As an entrepreneur, I'd say that, hey, expect change, be nimble, be ready, seize opportunities. And I always go back to the line I like to use: activity breeds activity. Get out there, get moving, stay active, and good things happen.
What personal characteristic has been most pivotal to your success?
Yeah, I'd say the flexibility side. I think even going back to my days in the corporate world a number of years ago, I think I got asked to go to India at one point, and I didn't even say how long. I said, let's go. 6 months later, I'm saying, now, when am I coming back? So I think just, saying yes to opportunities and being flexible has been what's helped me.
All right, great. So this is when it gets a little crazy here. I got my random question cards. Take it up a notch. Whoa, just dropped a few there. That's never happened. Okay, just tell me when to stop cutting the deck.
Stop.
All right. Where would you choose to live if you had to leave this country?
Had to leave this country. I'll tell you what, we spring braked in Costa Rica this past year with the kids, and there are a lot of things to like down there. So my wife and I just got back from Ireland a couple of weeks ago. So it'd be a toss up between those two, but I might err on the side of Costa Rica, a little closer to
Okay,
me.
great. Well, I just love that for the cost of living. Ireland, of course, is beautiful too. You're going to have to pay for it, though.
That's right. That's right. They do have lower taxes over there. I found it.
That's right. Yes, yes. Love it. Advantages either way. So can you name a book that's helped to forge you as a leader and entrepreneur, and tell us why?
Yeah, I'd say The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. That's one I've had quite a few people read. That I highly recommend. And it's not rocket science, but it's great reminders that the small things that you do on a daily basis add up over time, and the small things you don't do on a daily basis add up over time. So at the end of the day, it comes back to our habits, and it comes back to that we're the sum of all those different activities. So The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, highly recommend it.
What's the biggest hurdle you've overcome in your business in the last year, and what did it teach you?
Biggest hurdle. I mean, our business, just full disclosure, is up about 90% this year after being up 30% last year. I mean, we're seeing hockey stick growth. There's so much interest in franchising, which has been great. So I haven't had any huge hurdles. I think it's been, I feel very blessed. Usually it's very rare that in a year I can say there haven't been hurdles, but this past year I'd say maybe speed bumps. And, I think that's on a client by client deal basis. We've had some things that we've had to work through, but by and large, everyone's in a really good place.
Love the growth. Well, can you send us out with a quote to help forge our listeners as leaders and entrepreneurs?
Let's see, a quote. How about mention activity breeds activity? I think along the same lines, and I said this to my 5-year-old as he was walking out the door to school today, just kind of came to me. Good, better, best. Never let it rest till your good is your better and your better is your best. It's the idea of constant achievement. Get after it. Get better every day.
I love it. I don't think we're going to top that. So let's just head out, giving our listeners an opportunity to reach out to you. What's the best way to get in touch with Jon Ostenson?
Yeah, certainly follow me. LinkedIn is my most common social channel, but feel free to email me, jon@FranBridgeConsulting.com. No H in there, just JON@FranBridgeConsulting.com. But if you come out to our website, leave your email address, we'll add you to our monthly newsletter list, which we put out some great content. We'll also send you a free digital copy of our book. If you do choose to purchase online, as you did, all profits go to a great charity that we support, Hope International. However, again, if you want the free copy, just reach out to us on the email, and we'll have our assistant also. When you share your email address, our assistant will reach out and see if you'd ever like to have a conversation.
Outstanding. Well, Jon, I want to thank you for taking your time to share your knowledge and experience with our audience.
Enjoyed it, George. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.